My name is Amber Rubio. This is a picture of my daughter, Ashley Rubio. Ashley committed suicide when she was 12 years old. It was February 23rd, 2013, just 2 months short of her 13th birthday. She was in 7th grade, and we were completely taken by surprise by it. Ashley was a very active young lady. She played club softball, she played Little League, she played All-Stars, she played basketball, she did cheerleading, she was on a club team softball and club team volleyball. She was an A student in honors classes. She'd had the same friends since preschool. The neighborhood girls, they'd walk in and out of the house like they all lived here. We were completely taken by surprise. She wasn't that typical girl that you picture is going to be trouble. She wasn't dressed in black clothes and heavy makeup. She wasn't sexually active. Her grades weren't slipping. People would ask afterwards if she was moody. Of course she was moody. She was a 12-year-old girl, but not any more moody than your average 12-year-old girl. They'd ask if she spent a lot of time alone in her room, or was she sneaking around and hiding. And 3 years later, in hindsight, looking back, I could still say no. We didn't see any of those signs happening. Her grades weren't slipping. Her teachers loved her. She was an all-American, just classic girl. She loved to sing. She was in love with One Direction. She was going to be a physical sports therapist when she grew up because she loved sports and helping people. She loved animals. She liked making hair bows. She was just as girly could be. Unless she was stealing bases, then she was pretty dirty and down. But I think now, looking back, what I would say I would do different is I would have a conversation with her about suicide, about depression, about coping skills. These are things that I think are becoming even more important now than they were when I was her age. There's a lot more expectation, a lot more pressure on kids, and I don't think that they recognize that the way they feel is how so many other kids feel too. They feel alone, they feel like something's wrong with them, or like they're not meeting the standards or expectations that we're not putting on them, but they're putting on themselves. So when I look back, I think that what's more important than recognizing the stigma of suicide, and while I'm not saying it's not important to watch for the signs, because it is, a lot of times there are signs if you're one of the lucky ones, so you can actually get help before. We weren't that lucky. We didn't get those signs. So what I needed with Ashley was to open up a conversation for her, to be able to tell us that she had these feelings, or that she had these concerns, or that she felt this way, so that we could either help her or find somebody that could help her fix whatever was happening. After losing Ashley, we obviously she's one of 5 children. That was another thing. People always have this stigma about kids that they're neglected, or that they come from broken homes, or that they're using drugs, or any of those things. That's not always true. My husband and I have been married 20 years. We have 5, she's our second of 5 children. We have 4 girls and our little boy. When Ashley took her life, in 2013, my oldest daughter was 15 years old, and our youngest was 7. So after her death, obviously, there were a lot of things that were said in the neighborhood, things that were said at the school, things that were said both to my children and around my children, which I know is just, people were scared. It was something that doesn't happen in certain communities and certain neighborhoods. Unfortunately, that's the myth, is that it doesn't happen, but it does. It happens anywhere and everywhere. So after some of these things were said, both to my children and around my children, we had to have some pretty difficult conversations with them. And I think that that's the one thing that I've kind of taken from this is, 1, nobody's exempt. It can happen to anybody, it can happen anywhere, it can happen anytime. And 2, that there's a lot of things going on that maybe you're not aware of, that mental health can happen quickly. When we left the house the day she died, she was wearing my prom dress. She posted a picture actually on Facebook 20 minutes before she died saying, "Look at me wearing my mama's dress from the olden days," for Flashback Friday next week at school. She was dancing to One Direction songs. She was happy, she was giggly, she was silly. We came home and found her, and she'd been watching Say Yes to the Dress on TLC. It was not something that I think she went into lightly. I think it was a very impulsive, very final decision that she made in a split second. So those aren't things I think that you can necessarily be prepared for, but because of these difficult conversations we had to have with my other children, including a 7-year-old child, that it opened up the realization that your kids do know more than what you give them credit for. They're already hearing these conversations. They're already hearing people talk about it. But unfortunately, they're getting really bad information. And just like we used to not talk about drugs, because if you did, they were going to do drugs. This is kind of the same theory. People are afraid to talk about suicide with their children because if you talk about it, then it's going to put it in their head. It's already there. They're already hearing it. They already know about it. My son at 7 years old already knew what it was. We just had to give him the information that there is help out there and that there is ways to take control of your life so that suicide doesn't feel like your only option. And I think that's something that I've taken out of the loss from Ashley, is that you can have these conversations no matter how hard they are.